So today is Sakadawa, and because we're greedy little Buddhists, we don't actually think about what happened at Sakadawa. We think, how much merit can we gain today? So on these particular holidays, having to do with the Buddha's activities and enlightenment and his life, at those times, due to the blessing, the whatever merit we accumulate knowingly and in consciousness is multiplied by 10 million times. And of course, if you are a practitioner and you know about virtue and non-virtue, and you practice non-virtue on a 10 million day, guess what? But the good news is we're learning and we know, and we have the jewel that is Buddha in the palm of our hand. And so we know how to practice. At least we're learning. And we are fortunate for that, because during this time, if we could, for a moment, step back and look at the condition of the world in some sort of multi-faceted way, if we could really see with some sort of omniscience or some sort of wisdom that perhaps we may not have yet in our practice, we would see that not only is this time what has been called the age of degeneration, or Kali Yuga, but if we look around without those Buddhist terms and ideas, we can see for ourselves that we're in a heap of trouble. If anyone watches the news on TV or reads the newspaper, you'll learn that there's a lot going on. Our capital is, they're like kids fighting. Really dumb Italian kids. And I know, because I can't, part Italian. They just fight like they have no sense or no wisdom or no leadership whatsoever. I feel, as so does His Holiness Pena Rinpoche, that since this past election went as it did, this country will be weaker, and I've seen it already. We're much weaker. We are in a war. Not a war of our own choosing, really. Not the people of America, at least. We don't have any gripes with anybody in Iraq. And yet we have, there's an abscess of death that is happening there every day. And what did I hear today but that they're on the brink of civil war? And this is not the news that's commonly put out. The news that's commonly put out is more like, everything's fine, go back to sleep. Don't worry, we're handling it. But in fact, the world is suffering and the people in the world are suffering. I don't know how it is possible to be happy about the status of a war like this, where people are dying for nothing. It's just insane. I think our government is really in a shambles. I think so many places around the world, there's so much conflict, so much suffering that we, as a leadership nation, are not paying any attention to, because we like our own little gig over there in Iraq. Instead, there's suffering in Africa, terrible suffering, an annihilation of an ethnic group of people is happening there. Of course, we all know about the suffering that came from the tsunami, and if we think because they're not covering it anymore that suffering is over, well, of course, that's ridiculous. It's not the case. And if we really take our heads out of our practice for a minute and look around, just really look around, we can see that the macrocosm is really messed up. this is a time where I always think of America as the best country in the world. We're not perfect, but we're better than the rest. And why is that? Because of the freedoms. I love other countries that I've gone to, but they may not have the same freedoms. But here at this time we are losing our freedoms left and right. And it's all done with smoke and mirrors so that no one can notice. There's a blindness and a lack of awareness that has come over us as a people. And it turns out that America is now no longer in a leadership role in the world. And I think that that will continue. We have military leadership, perhaps, but do we have the moral high ground? Are we the same? What happened to that idealism that was America? We were the best because we could feed people, we could help people, we could develop medicines, we could be the cutting edge in benefiting beings. That was always our power. That was something we could do. And you know, different presidents may have handled it, different administrations may have handled it different way, but generally speaking, we were a country that could help. We were the country that people came to when help was needed. And now the world does not respect us, does not love us in the same way. They are suspect of our motives, as they should be. They are suffering where they don't have to suffer because we don't have the cash to help anymore. This country is strapped. And we are in such a weak position that we cannot take this compassionate leadership role, which really is something that eventually, I think that kind of compassion and kindness and always being there and consistency and your dignity and your wisdom and your cherishing of life, I think that if we still had that kind of leadership, that eventually, if we were true to those ideals and we really helped the underdog, no matter what we thought of their religion, if we really gave everyone an equal footing in our foreign policy, I just really think that it would be possible for people to follow us in the way that students follow their teachers, because they've evaluated them and they're pure. You know, in our system in Vajrayana, we evaluate our teacher according to certain standards. And leading amongst them all, of course, is true compassion. And for my thinking, true compassion is an absolutely necessary leadership role. Without true compassion, there is an imbalance of power, there's pride, there's ego, there's losing your way, there's all sorts of bad result. And yet we are no longer in the role of compassionate leader as a nation. And I think I grieve for that every day. Every day. So what I would like to talk about is, how does that macrocosm connect with, or does it connect with, the microcosm that is our minds, our practice? Well, it seems to me that in this time of degeneration, when it is so hard for teachers to teach and students to follow, it's harder now than it ever has been, due to the age of degeneration and the non-virtue being so all-pervasive, and the confusion, even people who think that they are very, very religious are stuck in dogmatism, and there's no compassion. And so my question is, how can we understand our relationship to that? Our tendency is to go to sleep. Well, I can't fix it now. I can't do anything about this. So good night. And I really think that this is a time of good-minded people, well-intentioned people, people of good character, to stand up in roles of leadership that don't divide us with stupid, dogmatic issues, but rather unite us in compassion. For instance, I look at my students and say, I don't care if you were drunk. Can you still love? Then you're okay by me. I don't care if you're gay. Can you still love? Then you're okay by me. I don't care if you're green or purple or if you've got bunions all over your feet. I don't care about any of those things. There are no standards that I hold as, this is my choice. There is no standards that I hold regarding my students that would keep them away if they demonstrate kindness and compassion. If you can't practice, that's all right with me. We'll go together slowly, slowly. If you feel like you'll never learn this stuff, that's okay. We'll do this slowly, slowly. But if you have a good heart, a well-intentioned heart, a mind of compassion, if you have awakened to the Bodhcitta and kindled that flame, and the Bodhcitta is that compassion, that all-pervasive compassion that is the Buddha's nature, that is your nature in truth, although we're not awake to it yet. But once we begin to kindle that flame, it grows and it deepens, and it becomes all-pervasive. And it dominates our life with a kind of relaxation, happiness, joyfulness, and hope. A good kind of hope, you know? I mean, at least the intention to make things better, I should say, maybe better than, which is better than hope. Hope is kind of mindless in a way. We hope for this and we're scared of that, but to take steps to really kindle that flame. Anybody who kindles that flame of kindness and tries their very hardest to dispel their poisons, I will accept that person as my student. You don't have to be good at what you do. And I think that my life was engineered to prove that. I wasn't even recognized till I was 38. And it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks. You guys may have noticed some of that yourself. Not I'm calling you any of you old dogs, but I'm just myself, you know. So it's hard to learn new tricks. It's hard to learn, especially new habits. Why am I talking about all this political stuff? Didn't you come here to hear a spiritual lesson? Well, you know what? It's the same taste. Because we are not a world of institutions, we are a world of people. And the intentions and the compassion and the good qualities of good people who speak their mind in a virtuous way in this world, this is what is needed. Once we learn that the macrocosm and the microcosm are one, and they are, you wonder, how does that work exactly? Well, here's a good example. Whenever people who don't know anything about astrology, that is Western astrology, explain how astrology works, they say, well, it's not scientific because they say the planets control us, and that's, of course, not how astrology works. But they're saying the planets control us, and of course we don't have any gravity field from those planets, so of course science has proved that astrology doesn't work. Well, the premise is wrong because that's not what astrology is built on. Astrology doesn't say those planets control you. astrology says the macrocosm and the microcosm are synchronous. So that you can look at your astrology and you can find the connection. You know, I'm not talking about newspaper astrology, I'm talking about professional stuff. You can look at that chart and you can see the struggle that you're going through right now. You can see it. Is some star making me have it? Or some planet? No, it's an indication. It's a synchronous indication. In the same way, sometimes I can look at your face and see you're stressed out, you know, or that something's bothering you, or some emotion is coming up, or something like that. It's synchronous like that. You can look at the sky and know what and mathematically know through math what the microcosm is doing. Conversely, you can look at the microcosm and then you can look and see where the correlations are. So that's one way of explaining the connection between the macrocosm and the microcosm. What we have to understand is that if the time of degeneration is coming so thick and so hard that we haven't any good leaders, and the ones that are good aren't strong, and the world is being led off a cliff as far as I can tell, because none of us, none of the religions other than what the Buddha has taught, gives any credence to cause and effect. And I worry about that, because cause and effect is the balancing law of the universe. Causes and effects arise interdependently. They seem to rise at different times and in different places, but they arise interdependently at the same moment. The moment we create some kind of non-virtue, or we polish up our poisons, you know, and let those poisons run the show. For instance, ignorance. We allow ourselves to remain ignorant and look at the world from a superficial point of view, not understanding that anything means anything. Just looking at, kind of like, you know, watch the shiny things and see the colors. Isn't it beautiful? There's that kind of superficial ignorance that sometimes we allow ourselves to fall into when we don't think about the heart of the matter. We don't think about the spirit of the matter. We just react. And Lord knows we don't look at the causes that we've created. Oh no, it's not my fault. So, as long as we're saying that, we're helping this world go downhill. As long as we think that way, we're helping the world go downhill. Dharma is a wonderful thing. When you look at it, it's so beautiful, the appearance of Dharma. This is a really nice altar, and we have beautiful statues and flowers and offerings and all the schmaltz, you know. And we have colors and we have pictures. And you should see my temple in Maryland if you haven't seen it. It's beautiful. It's stunning. It's a place of prayer. And we think, wow, this is Dharma. It's so beautiful. It's so rich with tradition. It has beautiful sounds, and boy, the power of that chanting, I really want to be around that. And yet, when we get deeper into Dharma, we realize that it's a little bit like a marriage. At first, you're really attracted and you're really hot for each other. Oh, I can say that from the throne because I'm bad. And you know, that kind of energy is ensuing, and there's all this, you know, blah, blah, blah going on. Naughty Lama. And, but then later on, you find out that you get married and you're playing house. But then later on, you found that marriage is not about playing house. It's about hard work. It's about two people changing. Both people have to change to accommodate one another. The benefit is of marriage is that we learn not to think about ourselves so much. So then you have to change. Well, Dharma's like that too. At first you're in love with it, the costumes, the colors, oh, it's beautiful. And when the lamas come with their horns, boy, it's just something. And so we go to the best lamas and we try to get the best colors and we see the best tankas and we go around from place to place and we try to just get all those teachings. I've had Dzogchen teachings, you may touch me. And really all that we're doing, if we stay at that level, is we are increasing our poisons. Simply increasing our poisons. And when it comes to that point in our practice, we realize that we have to go back to the foundation, really to the beginning, and get to the root of our intention. What drew us to Dharma? Obviously, we have some karma with this path. But perhaps, upon learning of compassion, upon learning of bodhicitta, we developed the ambition or the aspiration to give rise to compassion, to give rise to that bodhicitta, which is the all-pervasive, loving nature of the awakened Buddha. The bodhicitta, which is the primordial essence, the first display, the only display of emptiness. And so we go back to that and we think, I feel all dried up now, but in the beginning I really wanted to help. I wanted to help sentient beings. And I look at you guys and I know, because you've told me this years ago. And you don't remember it, but I do. That your intention was to make this place a better world by the time you leave it. You all said it in different ways, but each of you have had this aspiration of bodhicitta. Yet it turns out that we end up simply concerned for ourselves, simply self-absorbed, simply involved in ordinary things, and our lives have become very ordinary. And the problem with an ordinary life is that the 5 poisons do not hesitate to grow. If we do not keep with a mind of contemplation, if we do not keep ourselves, our mind, our heart, aligned with the bodhicitta. And this is a discipline. You don't wait till it happens. It's never going to happen to you. Never. That's another religion. And you're honest, you're free to go practice that, but you just have to sit there and look at the sky and wait. And I'm telling you that that's not how we practice. If we live ordinary, if we think ordinary, if we love ordinary, if we allow our lives to become just like everyone else's because we're comfortable in it, it's not the life of Dharma. Because while Dharma is all dressed up in brocade, I'll tell you, my teachers have told me many times, it's beautiful. See, it's Dharma, it's all brocade, it's all beads, it's all beautiful. But when you pull back the brocade, there's a knife. A triguk, the instrument of the Dakinis, that curved Vajra blade that cuts the ego. And that's the secret underlying nature of Dharma. You are supposed to change. Is it uncomfortable? Do you reach your limits sometimes? You think, "Oi, I don't know." Sure. But what's the offering if there's no determination? What's the offering if there's no Vajra strength? Instead, we hear the teachings, or we go to retreats, or we do what we want and come home, and we're the same darn person. And I ask myself, how can that be? I don't claim to have any profound or deep special practices. My practice is Guru Rinpoche, period, end of story. And it's enough. Not saying that should be your practice, but I'm saying that I don't feel that I have to prove myself to someone else or to show off my practice in any way. You see what I'm saying? I'm content to be simple. Whatever choice you make, if it has to do with the Bodhcitta, I'm with you. You want to be simple? Be simple. You just want to say Om Mani Padme Hum? I'm with you. You want to say the 7-line prayer? That's all? I'm with you. I'd like to see you go a little further, but that's all right, as long as you give rise to the Bodhcitta. On the other hand, if you want to be the student, if you really want to understand the Dharma, if you want to understand the nectar of the Dharma, because it is so deep and so profound and has such meaning that you really have to go into it before you can truly understand in a whole way what Dharma is. And so I'm letting you know here and now that is most important, so much more important, for you to keep your aspirations, that fire, burning in your heart. None of us knows if we'll have time to wait for this learning that we're going to accomplish someday in the future, or to wait for some retreat. None of us knows. Even our beloved Samla, she didn't get to do those things. Will she get to do them? Nobody knows. And so we are in a position now where we need to take account. We're not babies anymore. We've got gray hairs. Lots of them. Our teeth are getting long. You know what that means? It's an expression, long in the tooth. It means you're old. And so we have to take advantage of Dharma the way it is, the way we have it. We have to re-inflame, re-enliven our ambition, our care for Dharma and for its potential to benefit sentient beings. I look around at the country and the world, and when I ask myself, why is that happening? You have only to look at us as individuals and see. We're selfish. We're lazy. We're ignorant. We're slothful. Pride, it is the downfall. The best practitioners I've had, it has been their downfall every time. Not once, every time. And yet Dharma, the reason why Dharma is so sharp, why it's like that tree gook or that blade, that curved Vajra blade, why Dharma is so deep, why it takes so much commitment, why you take vows, is because Dharma is supposed to change you utterly. The pride that we have in our egos is astonishing. We think, well, I don't want to change. Why should I change? Well, because you're an ordinary sentient being. And if you want to wake up the way the Buddha has awakened, the way the path has been taught so that we can wake up to our true nature, you've got to change. And you've got to change exactly on that level. It's the ego level that prevents you from realization, prevents you from awakening, prevents you from experiencing any kind of joy or happiness. The most unhappy people in the world are the ones that think about themselves all the time, self-absorbed, and don't find a way to bring a kindness or to pray for others or to do something for others. They don't find that. Well, you don't find that in your life, you make it. And so many of us just don't do that. Dharma is supposed to make, you're supposed to change. You're not supposed to go into this passive, okay, now we're practicing, we've got our robes on, we're okay. It's supposed to be where you re-inspire yourself, you juice yourself up, you look at where you've been and where you're going, all the time. You know, every day, twice a week, once a month, whatever it takes for you. And instead, what we tend to do is to hold on to our poisons. We don't stretch ourselves to practice. We don't stretch ourselves to give rise to the Bodhcitta. We don't stretch ourselves to have good view. We think it's okay to gossip, even about the Sangha. And that not only tears down your practice, making it zero, but it also tears down the Sangha. On many occasions, many Sanghas have fallen apart because of infighting. If there was not strong leadership to pull them out of it. We may not have that kind of thing to that extent, but we gossip. And do we think about the person who we're gossiping about and think, do you know where that person came from? I have some students that, have come a long way. A long way. And many times, someone has said to me, oh, there's a problem with this student, or this student doesn't really have it, or this student, doesn't have bodhicitta, or this student doesn't meditate properly, or whatever. And I turn on my heel and I say, do you know where that student came from? Because you don't know. You don't know what they've suffered. You don't know what their obstacles were. You don't know how far they've come. For crying out loud, I have had students that lived under bridges at one time. And I don't care. Because if they are willing to look me in the eye and promise me that they will give rise to the bodhicitta, that's my student. And I will defend them, and I will do anything to help them. Sometimes we don't want to look at our 5 poisons because we're ashamed. And, sometimes we don't want to look at them because we know it brings us that bad feeling in our guts. The one when we got punished as a child or something like that. So we won't think about it. Well, okay, we're big now. We can revamp our thinking just a little bit. We know now that living with the 5 poisons nullifies our efforts in practice. Our main number 1 job is not Dzogchen. It's not even Nundro. Number 1 job is kill those defilements. Change them. Look at them and abandon them. Abandon hatred or anger. Abandon blame. Abandon gossip. Abandon pride. Abandon ignorance. Abandon slothfulness. And give rise instead to Vajra courage. When will Vajra courage come to you? When you breathe it and live it. It doesn't come from someplace else. Why can't we understand that? It doesn't come from someplace else. And even when we get caught, we get caught in a terrible situation sometimes, we have obstacles along the path. Oh boy, don't we? And when those obstacles hit us, very often we quit. We lay down. Okay, I'm done, I'm finished, I can't get up from this. And what I'm trying to tell you is that is not Dharma. That is not what Dharma is. Dharma has confession. Forgiveness is a moot point. The only one who has to do any forgiving is you. Forgive yourself and forgive others. Forgiveness is not going to come to you like a ray of sunshine with the Hallelujah chorus. You have to do it. And whatever your excuse is, this obstacle happened, that obstacle happened, I'm not happy, give me my space, blah, 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 whatever it is. Whatever our obstacles are that make us come out in these prideful, arrogant ways and harm others rather than bring soothing and healing. Whatever excuse we use, it's no excuse at all. We are not what we seem to be. We look like flesh and blood, but in fact, we are something that is primordial essence. Because we are in a mind of duality, we have some essential structure. There is the structure that's visible to our eyes and can be touched, and there is the structure that is invisible to our eyes and cannot be touched. Energy bodies, energy structures, channels, winds, and fluids. What is the favorite Sedona word? Aura. That's us. That's what we look like. That's what we really are. We are these displays of the very nature that is the primordial nature and the fundamental underpinning of any realization. When you take up Dharma, you should take yourself to task. Not in a mean way. I found out that is non-productive. To do it in a mean way, where you're putting yourself down and you're saying, I'm no good because I did that or this or whatever. That is not helpful. And I really ask you to abandon that. To put yourself down, please don't do that. But take yourself to task. That's a different thing. That's when you go back to your original inspiration. What hooked me? What got me into Dharma? That original aspiration where you cared. You wanted to make the world a better place. You wanted yourself to be free from suffering, and that all other beings would be free of suffering as well. That's your inspiration. It's what you go back to. And from that point of view, pridefulness seems obscene. Can I say that any uglier? Obscene. Arrogance seems like, selfishness, all that stuff is just, when we are fanning the flame of the Bodhcitta, that other stuff begins to fall away. Well, we have all kinds of things going on, like if I get a job, then I can practice. Or if I get a relationship, then I can practice. Or when things settle down for me, then I'll practice. Or when things liven up for me, then I'll practice. Or, we have all these things, but this is the time, and we are the ones that we've been waiting for. If we, following the Buddha's teaching, together as we are, with our aspirations and our hopes to benefit others, cannot tame our poisons. What hope is there for Congress? You know, what hope is there for our world? I tell you that this is beyond doubt. The macrocosm and the microcosm are one. They're not connected. They're one. We perceive ourselves in these bodies. We do not know that we are all that is, all display, all emptiness. We do not know that that nature is our nature. It doesn't need to be built or connived or created. It is that. And for us who have learned and can practice and have aspired, if we can't tame our poisons, who will? For how many years now have I spoken of self-honesty? You know, self-honesty isn't even a Buddhist teaching. You know why? Because in different cultures where Buddhism started, they didn't play it the way we do. They weren't egomaniacs the way we are. They weren't living for materialism the way we are. They were taught about good qualities from birth. And let me tell you what happens when you teach a child from birth how to be a good person. They turn out well. So we've come to the point in our lives where we have to take account. We have to reassess. You know, your practice can be potent if it's on money, Padme Hum. It can be potent. Your practice can be potent if you say the 7-line prayer and that's it. And you know nothing else. There are plenty of stories of Mahasiddhas who did nothing but one mantra, but they did it with such aspiration, such sincerity, such longing for the well-being of others, that when they died, they had signs and attained the rainbow body. This is true. And yet we sit here kind of fat and happy because we're in America. And you know, we can go and practice Dharma and feel good about that. And we can go and retreat and feel good about that. And we don't have to change. I'm telling you, you got it all backwards. That's completely backwards. First, fight the Vajra war. Fight that war to kill the enemy. The enemy does not exist outside of you. The enemy is the poison of the dualistic mind. Of course, once we have dualism and selfishness and arrogance and the lack of capability of appreciating the suffering of all sentient beings, we get arrogant and powerful and we start, you know, changing the world in a different way. What I'm saying is, we have the path, we have the method. There's no reason why we can't begin to really tame our poisons, really look at them. And having changed ourselves, then begin in our practice to offer that to the world. We all do the practice of sending and receiving. What are you offering? Your 5 poisons? What are you breathing out? Remember when we practice the sending and receiving that we take in the suffering of sentient beings. That's Om. Ah is the absolute wisdom, connection, inseparability with the 3 precious jewels. Hum. Then we pray that all of our virtue, all of our accomplishment, anything that we have ever done of benefit would be given to other sentient beings so that they will have the practice, the karma to practice. But if you are not taming your 5 poisons, what are you offering them? When you walk around in your robes and maybe you're haughty and arrogant or you're not kind, what are you offering? This is what we have to examine. Some of your lives aren't going well, have you noticed? What have I taught you? Being absorbed in ordinary life, being absorbed in the poisons, this brings sorrow. Giving rise to the bodhicitta and being faithful to that flame and sharing it with all beings, without judgment, without gossip, without any of that crap. As though a bodhisattva was here, standing in the world. Act as if, you know, so that you can offer them something. I really think that if noble-minded people, good-minded people, such as you, were to really try this, really handle your poisons, and really offer that to sentient beings, I think we could make a difference. I still believe in that old 100th monkey stuff. You'll never be happy until you do. Your practice will never bring result. There will be no result. None, even the highest practices, without taking into hand our poisons. So you are free to be with yourself. Honestly, kindly, and yet as though you were really looking out for yourself. Not in a stupid, mindless way, but in a real way, where you can really look at your faults, look at your bad qualities, see what they are, and say, this is not enough for me. I want more. I want to offer to sentient beings. I want to breathe the Vajra breath to all beings. I want all beings to taste the nectar. This is just not enough. And so you begin to take on your poisons. And that's the beginning of real practice, no matter what you've done so far. I don't care if if you've learned the highest teachings, if you have not pacified your passions, your poisons, there's no result. And so I'm asking you, begging you, to look at the world around you, to see that we're lost. It's bad news in every direction. And it's not getting better. Even our country that we put so much faith into, to lead the world in, to stop hunger, to stop illness, there's so much we could do. Our country is turned away from the path of good, as far as I can tell. Should that make us feel helpless? No. That's when you rise up like a giant. That's when you rip open your heart and you say, I'll give anything, anything. I'll do anything to stop this hurt. That's when you start to really practice from the depth of your being. So it's time to stop playing the mind games, you know? It's time to stop pretending. Let's get back to where we were. And for those of you that are new, come on this journey with me. This is a journey of awakening. Lord Buddha himself said, I'm not different from anyone else, except that I am awake. Awake to the bodhicitta. Awake to the fundamental luminosity that is your nature. There's nothing to lose and everything to gain. So let us now approach practice from this point forward humbly, graciously, willingly, and clean. You know? Clean up those poisons. Are you guys hearing me? Yes. First job, first job. That's all you don't even have to pronounce this stuff. First job, clean up those poisons. Okay. And if you can't see them by looking inside of yourself, see them by looking outside of yourself. You're locked in a karmic bubble that is your own mind. The lack that you see outside is the lack within. They are not different. Okay. Nanda.